All right. Good morning, everyone. Uh, this is Pete. Andy's making me do the directing today. Uh, so bear with us. We're starting. I'm not sure what webinar number this is.
163.
163. Andy's going to pick up on the web services where he left off last time with part 2 of what's going to be, I believe, a 3-part series. So that's what we're covering today. A little bit of housekeeping. As we mentioned last week, if you want to just chat and say hello to each other, if you'll use the comment section for that. And if you have a question for Andy concerning what he's covering, if you'll post that in the Q&A section, then I can keep track of those questions and get them to Andy when he has a chance to answer them. And with that, we'll turn it over to Andy.
Good morning, everybody. Glad to see everybody with us. Last trip on the webinar. It's been a little while to do that, but we'll kind of go through or just kind of recap a little bit. We had built the project and put together, how we were laying out the different structures to be sent, things like that to everyone. The order detail, the member structures, all of the structures that come back through the WSDL that you're going to include inside your program, whether it's mobile or web or desktop, it doesn't really matter. But it allows you then to say, these are what I'm returning to you, this is the information that I'm going to return to you, and this is what you can utilize and display. Now, we had discussed a little bit more about how much to return, and that changes the different structures that we're going to return as well to them, and the max amount that can be done, things like that. So we kind of went through it. So phase 2, we're going to get into actually getting the data and returning the results, testing those results, and doing all of that. Now, I purposely left out not doing the analysis. I purposely left out doing all the classes and things like this. I use the classes. There's nothing saying that you cannot do a direct WinDev, H, read, seek, all of that stuff. I utilize the classes for what I do for no other reason is that's the way I do things, and it's fairly efficient for my work. If you want to use the HF, the high profile functionality, you most certainly can. As far as that's concerned, you certainly can. So, to get things rolling, we're going to go ahead and put together the analysis today based upon the database that's already created up there. We're going to put together all of the UML classes that's necessary for those classes, for the analysis. We're going to go get the management classes and build those as well. Okay. And by the time we get done with this, we'll be up there running it on the web and through the WSDL and the interface and actually pulling back data and showing the information on the web page. And then we'll move into version 3 or session number 3. Pete's doing the next one in 2 weeks, and then I will finish up this in 2 weeks after that. So I'm about I'm 4 weeks from today. 4 weeks from today, we will go over phase 3 of this, which we will actually move this, and we'll move this actually into a mobile product instead. Okay, is what we'll do. So let's go through this and get this done. So in order to put an analysis in the project after you've already created the project, we're going to go to description, we're going to go to the analysis, and we're going to create an analysis. So we're going to create an analysis here, let it do its thing. And this one here, since I use in Postgres for this so everybody can get to it very easily, we're going to use Postgres SQL. And I usually call it SQL Con. And we're going to go through this, and we're going to enter in the parameters here. and step through each one of these. And go on through and get the database. And we got the parameters, and here we go. Okay. Use the file from existing, and what we should be able to do now is list all of those files. Oop. Database, okay. Let's get my connection done. Sometimes this does this. No, it's not my combination connection. Okay. And the database name is not going to be that. We are using a database of class test is what we want. Okay. New data file, use the existing, Postgres. Let's list them all up. We're going to leave them in that format. We're going to move over all of these here. I'm not doing Glenn's. That's another one. And then we bring all of them here. So this is fairly easy. We just throw them in here. Now we've got access. We can add, change, and delete using the HF commands. Everybody's happy. Life is good. The next thing we want to do is go ahead and generate that, and we can generate the UML code to things like this. So let's go ahead and do that. The UML code, what it does, and this is the really nice thing about it, is it creates all the file structures or all the UML file structures for your classes. So all I have to do is come over here and say, I want to create the UML. In doing so, I'm just going to do a class diagram, and it's going to open up, and there's going to be nothing in it at the moment. And what I need to do now is I can right mouse click and I can tell it to update from the analysis. What that's going to do is check off any of the tables that I have there and say, yep, that's the ones I want. And it's going to generate each and every one of them. If you notice, what it does now is now we've got all of these fields that were associated in the class or in the analysis is now here in the UML, and all I have to do is generate the code. Okay, so for each one of them now, we'll generate a code for each one of these items. Of course, it's going to check them out too because I got all that. And off and running. So now it's created the class of those variables within the that's associated with the analysis. And I can add more classes to it. I can add properties to it. We're going to do all kinds of things before it's all said and done. But right at the moment, this is as far as we need to do on this. So now we need a few base classes. You can see the classes are here. We need a few base classes to get things running. So I'm going to import them from my SCM. I have the repository, and that's been talked about before as the repository being out there that I have provided for everybody for quite a while ago. If not, I'll put up the link off of Dropbox for it again for anybody that does not have it. But we're gonna go ahead and do this. We need the CCS Manager class, we need the Equate class, and we need the Error Management class. And all I do is I share them with that, so that way if I make any changes, that it gets propagated throughout everywhere. This is one of the big things about the SCM that I truly, truly love, is the fact is that I could share classes, and I share certain classes, not necessarily all of them, but share certain classes. And those classes will allow me to keep them the same across multiple projects. You can share windows, you can share components. You can share anything you want out of the SCM. So if you're not really familiar with the SCM, there's certain things you go back on YouTube and take a view at that both myself and Glenn Rathke, we've all talked about the SCM at different times about it and trying to get your head around it. Okay, so we're going to create a label for the Equate class. That takes care of that one. Okay. All right, so now what are we at? We got a few little classes. We're good to go, and the thing we got to do now is create a couple of file management classes. The way the classes work, fairly straightforward, is that for every one of these single record classes that we have here, we have another class that manages that. And that's what we call the file management classes. I go get these a little different because each one are separate. Each one are uniform with who they go to. So again, I open from, just do a straight open, and I go into my repository again. And in there is the file management class. Now, why don't I put it in here? Pete actually saves it in here and then moves it forward. I don't. It's just a difference in desire. You can actually add the file management class here and exclude it from the generation, and excuse me, it'll work just fine. I just don't do it. So now I got the file management class. Obviously, I can't make any changes to this because it actually belongs in the SCM to the other one. There's a reason behind that. Excuse me. I never get into the issue of overwriting my original class that way. Got a little itch in my throat there, so I had to take a drink of coffee. So I do a save as. Since I'm working with the members class, I'm going to call this, or the members rather, I'm going to call this member class. I name them exactly the same. As you can see, member is here, member class is there. That way I know they're associated together. We're off and running. When that happens now, you'll see that I now have it sitting here and I've got this UML class error. All I do now is do a search and replace. Replace that with member. Replace all. Okay, so I'm good to go now. The only thing I got to do is put in my primary field names and information so I can tell this class what we're working with. So I type in member dot, and it's member sysid. Member is the name of the file, and if I want to use something else other than the full file name of member, all I have to do is type it in like this, and I'm good to go. One day, and I know somebody's going to ask about the audit trail class, we are going to put together a webinar on the audit trail class, and what that does is basically keeps a snapshot of the record on add, on change or delete as the user uses it. So that way, in essence, what happens is that you got a history of all the changes field by field as it moves forward. It's pretty nice. We've been using it extensively and working with it, so it's something there. The rest of these items all builds it together. You're done with this. I'm done with that on the member class right there. We're finished. So I save that. Now I got to repeat that for the rest of them: order header, order detail, and inventory items. So this is spend a few moments watching, and I'll show you how we get through this fast and furiously. Save as. We're going to do this order detail. I would do order header. Just be logical. Order header class. File. Okay. And then I got my And you wonder why I type in order header and then dot to find the deal, because that way I never misspell it that way. I don't have any problems. And all I have to really do is delete that and come out here and put the ending quote that way. And all right, that one there's done. File. Open. And we'll do file management again. Order detail.
Adriano's asking a couple of questions over there that are basically, he's talking about people being able to decompile your mobile app and get your database connection and so forth. And that's kind of one of the advantages of using the web service is your mobile app is only connected to the web service, not to the connection.
That is correct. And I'm going to show you how to make sure you don't got injection problems either with the web service, which is one of the things that can come up in talking about it is that sending in a statement that would allow it to screw up your database, and we don't want that either. So that's called injection. And I'll show you how to keep that from happening as well. Kind of a deal here that some people may not know about. If you highlight the word and it's over a few, well, like 3 or 4 characters, if you highlight the whole thing, hold down your shift key and hit the double quotes, it'll put double quotes around the whole thing, which is awesome. Okay. All right, so now we've got all 3 of those done. We're pretty much in good shape. Now we need to go get our data. If you remember right, we had set up our class procedures to be fetch members, order details, order header and detail together, and fetch order header. So we basically can get the details for one, we can get the header and the detail together, and we can get the headers by themselves and the members. Let's go through the members. We'll go through the simple ones first, and then we'll get into the more complicated ones as we move forward. So let's go into fetch members. Now, there's a couple things that we need to know here. Number one is, with the fetch members the way it is, we don't have any filters. We're going to get everybody if we want to, but what if we just want one, or if we want to group them by a certain area or something like this? Well, let's go ahead and tell it how we want to work it. So I'm going to put in an argument for a where clause. Okay? And what that where clause will give me, and I can do is string if I want, but what that where clause will give me means I can send any where clause or any filter that I want to use to fetch certain members. So give me all of the members from Texas. Give me all the members from Italy. Give me all the members from wherever they may be. So this really solves a lot of problems in how to get the data and being able to filter the different levels of data and bring them back to you in a methodology that you can use. So we send in the where clause. We're going to add that to every one of these because we're going to where clause every one of these, and that obviously will change our WSDL. And now we can go ahead and start looking at getting the data. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we got to declare the file management class. So this is members class. So I'm going to do members data is members class. Okay. I also got to declare the return structure. If you remember right, we have the return structure over here called members ST. Okay. And then we got the mem return structure. There's 2 different things that we got going. The members return structure tells me whether I was true or false in any return string message. So if I've got an error I can return the error without returning the array of the data. This is one thing that I find missing many times out there on other WSDLs, is not returning an error to you. They'll return an error to your Wireshark or something else so you can go see it, but it's real hard to get the error back to you. So this way it works out very nicely. I can send them a message back, even if they do a select asterisk from, you know, from orders, and there's 10 million orders. I can come back there and say, you only got the first, you know, 500 orders. You need to put a where clause on something. You know, I could send them things like that, and that's what it's for. So I got the member return structure, and I got the member structure itself, which is the record that I'm going to put in there, and that's the two things that I've got to deal with here. So I'm going to go ahead and say return record is my member structure. That's the record, and I'm going to do a return data is my return. Sorry, let's see, mem return structure. So now I got both of those put together. All I need now is the member record itself, and I've got everything declared that I need to have declared. We're about ready to go get some data now. We've got the where clause. The member class has everything kind of set up, and that's the reason why I use it. And we'll probably have Glenn come back in and do a training deal on just doing straight HF to this, because he's done one before. I mean, it's fairly easy, but I use classes because it's much easier for me in the things I do. I can go get large amounts of data or filter out large amounts of data fairly quickly. So here I'm going to do a member data filter string. That is the string that filters anything. It's my arg where clause. That's all I need to do. Now, in order to keep injection from happening, because injection is the item of something being sent or another command being sent to SQL, either MS SQL, Postgres, whatever it may be. But the key point about it is the thing usually has a semicolon in there, and that's how they do it. What they'll do is they'll send a where clause of where 1 equals 1, semicolon, delete from whatever table. Okay? And what happens is now it has just executed this second one, and you've got no records anywhere within your system because it just dropped the table. Okay? So that's a bad juju. We don't want that. We would rather the whole statement fail than to do that. So one of the simple ways to keep that from happening is just a replace command. And all I'm going to do is arg where clause. I'm going to look for the semicolon, and then what I'm going to do is replace it with blanks. Now, what happens there is that if I send a where 1 equals 1 delete from, well, that's an invalid SQL statement, and the whole thing's going to fail, and I don't have to worry about it no more. You can get more fancier. You can look for this. You can strip out things. You can look for where clauses and see if there's any commands like select, delete, you know, stuff like that in there. You can certainly do that and send back, you know, what it is. But that's, you know, that is the most simplest way to do it, because without that semicolon, it's going to fail. Now I've done that, I need to fetch the data. So I'm going to fetch the data, get the records, and I've got it all. And the thing I'm going to do now is test, did I get any data back? If that equals true, that's correct. I forgot. You got to replace it. If you're going to replace, you can't just replace it that way. I'm used to MS SQL. I don't have to do that. Now, if that's true, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say my return data dot retval equals false. Return data dot ret message statement returned no records. Okay, and then I'm going to do result ret data. That gets me out right then. I'm done. I don't have to do anything more. And what that basically does is sends back a blank set of arrays because there's nothing going to be in there. But it sends me back that the red val is false. There's no records returned, so he knows that whatever where clause he sent returned nothing, and he's not confused on whether or not that it's broke or something happened. He can easily find out that way, and it gives him some information. So other than that, what I got to do now is basically go through the records and assign them to the array. That's what I've got to do right at the moment. So for each, for index equals 1, 2, member data, rec, reference, member record, my member data, rec, index. Now, I've already got the ret record equals member structure, so really all I have to do is, since I created them from that, is all I have to do is ret equals. Now you see I'm using the assign, not the equals, but I'm using the assign. Because these, even though they're the same structure, it actually is going to create an XML versus what it actually is. So let's, seriously, you've got to use the assignment instead. So member record, okay, and then what I'm going to do now is array add, and that is ret data, member data, and the value is ret record. Now, there are other ways to do this. I don't necessarily have to move it into the member record before assigning it here. I can just actually do a deep assign straight for it. I am doing this a little bit longer on purpose because every one of us that's been in this long enough knows how to take a shortcut and move data around. I'm doing this for the most simpler so that way you can see how everything step by step, okay? So for all those that says, well, all I have to do is move the array directly into the ret record, yes, you certainly can. But we're going to keep it this way just for ensuring that we we keep a consistent methodology of teaching. Okay. Now I've now moved everything into the member data. The only thing I want to do is I want to check the amount of records coming back. Now, you can arbitrarily set how much records that you want to return. You can say, I don't want to return more than 100 at a time, or 50 at a time, or 500 at a time. You got to remember that your XML is going to be a lot larger than just the simple records because you got all the labels and everything around there. So you got to be concerned about whether the guy is saying, give me a select asterisk and there's 100,000 records in there. He will never get 100,000 records. So fairly simple. If my ret data, member data, is greater than, say, 1,000. Then I go back again, and I can easily say statement exceeds return max records. And he knows what he needs to do. Okay? And that's going to actually return it back to him, but I can also tell it to delete everything over 500, or I can break it out here that if the index is greater than 500, break, things like that. I can certainly do that. I can look at the occurrences on the member data. There's many different ways to do this, and that way you can limit how many records is coming back. But if you got everything, the only thing I need to do now is go ahead and say ret data dot ret val equals true. No message. That's it. That is the entire process right there. So let's go through this one more time just to make sure we got it, because we can repeat this for the other two. And then we'll do the combo so that way we know how to do multiple ones. Okay? So what I got here right now is, remember, I've declared each one of the structures that I need to work with. A lot of times in organization, I'll keep these together. So I've got the member class, and I've got the record, I got the member structure, and I got the return data. I've did a replace on the where clause and assigned it, so that way if there's any semicolons, I've cleared those out. Okay, well, we'll get close to spelling it right. There we go. Then I assign that to the filter stream, because that's basically it. You're done. That's all you need to do, and I fetch all of the data. If the empty is true, then I return I got no records at all. If there is more than one, then I'm going to fill in every bit of that data and add it to the return structure. Once check the values of that, and I return, and I am finished with that right there. Okay? Now, what we're saying is that, okay, that took me 10 minutes or so to do this. How do I do the rest of them? Be honest with you, I fairly cheat. I'm going to copy every bit of this, because they nothing different except for the names of the files. I'm fetching order header, so how do I do this? Well, I'm going to come back up here, and this is going to be order header data is order header class. This is going to change from member structure to order header structure and order header return. No, something else. Let's see what that is. That's what we call it. Oop, wrong one. Okay. And then all we have to do is change the names, because nothing else changes. A little bit more lazy programmer. I don't even like typing that much. No, since I named it ret record, I don't have to do nothing but keep the same thing. I don't have to change anything. And bingo, done with that one. Now we got to do the order detail. This one here is a little bit even easier. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Okay, change these.
All right. Well, while Andy's doing that, there's a question from Derek about the 4-2 loop, and you'll notice in Andy's code that we're seeing the little green underline saying that there's a compile warning there. And what that's talking about is if you, instead of using 2, if you use _2 _, then the 2 part of that clause only gets evaluated the first time it executes. So in his code, he really should be doing for index equals 1, 2 with the _2.
That's correct, and I do go back there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That it depends on what you're doing. If the count is not going to change midstream on you, then you should use the _2 _. That way, it only gets evaluated once, and theoretically will speed up your code. But I'll tell you, I have yet to see a programming language that handles arrays as smoothly as WINDEV does.
That's true.
They are super fast regardless. But yeah, that is a good point, Derek.
You're correct, and I usually always go back and do that. It's just something that you don't think about when you go through and just writing 2. So I usually go back and do that before I'm finished.
And Art's asking, could you have used indirection instead of changing the names? And yes, you could use.
Well, to a point, but not on classes.
In some points, really, what if you wanted to go that route, what you would do is all of his code could have been just return record, those kind of things, and then all he would have to do is change the class names in the definitions.
I could have just put return data, database data, and everything be the same. The only thing I have to change is the class names. And
we're doing it this way to make it a little clearer, educational wise.
There's one thing about being abstract, and I'll touch on this. There's one thing about classes and being abstract. You can get to a level where when you read it, you don't understand what the hell's going on. Okay? So I do not go through and put, fetch data is order detail class, fetch record is ordered, and be everything is fetch record or whatever I want to call it. I would rather have it the actual name of the file or the actual name of the record that's being dealt with. And the reason is readability. If you do not, like most of us don't, keep extensive documentation of our program, then you must self-document. So when you read it, I know down here, if I'm in 700 lines of code or whatever it may be, I know I'm working with the order detail, not with the order header, or not with this or not with that. I know what I'm working with. Okay? So even though that you can do all of that, be very sparing because it's not as cool as you think. Art's been in it for 40-some years. I know programming for years and years. I've been in it for 30, close to 30 years. Pete's been in it close to 30 years. And I can guarantee you from at least Pete and I's standpoint, if we read somebody else's code and it is less obfuscated, as they call it, and more realistic to where we can read what they're trying to do and more simplistic in the code, believe me, we think they're better coders than the guy that tries to be so cool that everything's so obfuscated they can't understand what's going on. It's just because you're trying to get somebody to help you or something like this. If we can't understand it, how the hell are we supposed to help anybody? So although you can, the only time I use indirection, as much as powerful as it is I use it inside the classes. You can see it inside the classes. You can certainly see it inside there. But when it comes down to the actual code where I'm writing something, I want to be able to know exactly where I'm at as I'm going through it. Second of all, I also have other people that do programming for me on occasion. Pete's done things for me, and I've done things for Pete. I've got a couple other deals. And when Pete calls and say, where the heck is this, I can tell him exactly what he's looking for because I know it's in English. I know it's exactly what I want it to say. And he'll be able to find what I'm doing and read what I'm doing fairly quickly. And we've been doing that for years with each other, and believe me, it works out wonderfully. So always keep that in mind, that you know, basically it's a 30-day window. You're going to have a hard time remembering how many things you've changed like that 30 days later. If you leave it as English, it's a whole lot easier. It's a whole lot easier. That's the reason why you see me name this as order detail, order header, member, so I know exactly what I'm dealing with. Okay? So now we've done all those, and the last thing is the fetch, order, and detail combination. What this is doing here is saying, okay, I'm going to go select one order. So I got the order header data and I got the order detail data. So give me all of the orders for customer A, or give me all of the orders for this month. Things like that. So I want the order header and the detail together is what I'm looking to do. Now this one here is going to get a little bit more fun, okay, in my opinion, because I'm allowed at this time to actually combine things together in my SQL statement and stuff like this, and I'm going to show you how that works. We're sitting here close to a quarter till. And what we want to do, first of all, is let's go ahead and generate this and test our members and stuff and get that back, because we're going to run out of time as far as that's concerned in getting through everything. So let's take a look at it. We got fetch members where we've gone through this. We should be fine. I got to put one thing over here on the class. And if you'll notice that I have set up the DB connection to point to the database up there, which you guys can certainly get. So I've set up the DB connection. If you're doing as one other person, we've had another company we're looking at where you have a local database or a local system that you're doing all your development on, and then a different database entirely. I can test everything locally here by doing this. But I do want to change it from the analysis if I've got a different database. So I set myself up a totally different connection, and I change the connection in the database right here is what I do. Last thing is, if you are using the classes, you got to set the connection variable here in order for everything to work. So let's publish this thing. Direct setting on the functions. And this is the same thing we did last time. And we're going to deploy it on the website. This is the only time you need the web services. You got to have the WAS server in order to do this. Seven files to update, go for it. Don't need to update any HF files. And then we're done. Of course, the WSDL now has changed. And we've got the index here that is now different. And let me bring this down so we can work with it a little bit. Okay? All right, so here's the new WSDL that was created. You see we still got the structures here, but what has changed? Well, what has changed is all of our messages changed where we got the where clause and we got a result from every one of them is what we have. So we got the where clauses and the result back that we've got to deal with on every one of these, and that tells us is what's happening. So if I'm doing the where clause here and I want to send the filter string, if I want everything, all I have to do is hit the test and I should get it. Hopefully everything's right. Otherwise, I can say where last name like, you know, whatever, if I know the field definition stuff, but we're just going to hit this and go. If you notice now, what I've got here is a result set. I've got member data, and I've got the result set of every member that is currently in that database. This is the XML record that would be returned back to your calling WSDL program. So let's take one here. We got Zeke is one, Jack is another. So let's look, do we have anything that have more than one? Okay, Fred Davis, Marlon, Rick, do I have any 2 R's? No, I don't. Okay, so let's look for Jack by himself then, okay? So we do a where member name like Jack. I should get back 1. Well, I did. Let's see here. So we've got a little bit of a problem because the where clause did not work. Because I told it to sit on fetch members where member name like Jack %. So we need to figure out why that didn't work. So let's go back to our program, and this is how you can test it without publishing. Because that's what we're going to do, is we're going to test this without publishing and see why something did not work like it's supposed to. I'll go in the fetch members. We've got the where clause there, and how do you run it? Well, you can see I've got test procs and internal procs. It's the 2 different ones. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to the internal one, and I'm going to say, I'm going to give me a new global procedure and just call it test. That's all I care about. And all I'm going to do at this time is I'm going to do a fetch members. And I need to have a return structure to send things, so I'm going to say return data is return, what is that? Return structure, I think it is. Mem return structure, that's what I'm looking for. And we go back here, put that there, okay. And I want return data equals that. And I'm going to put in here where member name like Jack inside. Close the parentheses. Put double quote on the end. Okay, so how do I run this? Just put a stop there, and I hit my go button right here, the run the procedure test, or F9. When I hit that, I will go through this procedure, open up all my data. Now I'm here. Now what this is basically the same exact way that I would call it remotely. So I want to see why. So let's do this thing first, and let's just see what the return data says. So return data says true, red message is nothing, but you can see I got a bunch of records. I shouldn't have 7 records. I should just have 1. So let's see what happened here across the board. I'm going to run it again. And this time I'm going to step into it. Now, so we continue that so that way I don't have to deal with that again. Detail step into it. Let's step through the different things. Where's my where clause? Okay. That should be fine. Filter string is where member name like Jack. So I'm going to go with my detail here. And we'll see what my SQL statement says. Doesn't say anything, does it? Just says select asterisk from member. So why are we not getting what we're doing here? Why is filter string not being filled in? It's blank. Okay. That should not be happening. It should be fairly easy. Okay, any other questions going on there, Pete?
Adriano asked a question, but then you immediately answered it with it was about the internal procedures, and yeah, that's exactly what they're for, is the testing you're doing. So you purposely made this mistake so that you could show that, I know.
Well, yes, but it's not exactly what I wanted it to be.
And then I would have to provide the source code on the official form and pass the link to me on my email for me to disclose. I'm sorry, Adriano, I'm not sure I understand what you're asking there. Perhaps get with Andy after the webinar, and he can take care of you there. I'm not sure what you're asking there.
Okay. Why is my filter string not being filled in? Let me run this again and see what's going on. It's like it's not being assigned. It's like it's not being assigned for some reason.
Yeah, it's like you're getting another instance of the class or something.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It shouldn't be happening. I'm going to have to member data, member, okay, place. Nah, I shouldn't have another instance of that. Okay, obviously I've done something ignorant here because that should not, that should be there. Let's try this one more time. If this doesn't work, we'll go on and then I'll figure out what I did wrong. Because it definitely works everywhere else I do things. So
yeah, it looks right to me.
Ah, it's there. It's there now.
That may have been that that wonderful on the fly compile not keeping up with you.
Yeah, maybe
occasionally.
Okay, so I'm going to go through this, let it go through. I'm going to step through it so we can get it back out. Go back here, get down to here. And step through. Okay, so now let's look at RET data now. And RET data is only going to have one record, as you can see. It's only got the one Jack Anderson, which is exactly what we're looking for. Okay? And we're done with that. So now I've got full control of what's going on. So let's test one other thing here.
And that's a very what he just showed you there is very important because testing web services is difficult until you get your head around testing them like he just did, because you can't use the debugger from calling the web service because you're not in the web service, so you have to test it from the web service code.
Yeah. Now the key part that I look at on this is that you're talking with another program, or you're going to have people talk to you through another program, so you have no idea what's going to be sent to you. You don't have any idea what's going to happen. Even from yourself, you want to make sure that, okay, this is my expected results when I send this back. So that way you know that your web service under 99.9% of the time is going to work as expected. Okay? This keeps you from having any kind of real problems. Okay? So you can see right now, I'm sorry, I should have run it down here, but as you can see right now, I've only got the one Jack Anderson now. Let me go back here. So you can see member name like Jack, and I do the test. Now I only have one. So now what I can do is go over to my mobile program or wherever it is, import the WSDL, and I can run this exact same test, and I should have this exact results if everything is right. Everything is peachy from here. We should be happy. Life should be good. We're moving forward. Rock and roll. Okay? So far, is there any questions on what we've talked about as far as moving forward with this portion of the project? And I still want to spend a little bit of time doing that multiple return for header and detail. But I want to make sure that we've got this part that everybody's pretty much settled on it. So if there's any questions, ask them now while I set up to do the multiple header details section. And I'll let Pete go from there. You got anything?
All right. No questions so far. I think I can talk briefly on the SCM. Andy touched on how he was using the SCM for the repository and stuff, and you've heard this statement from us, but I'll reiterate it again today because I'm working with a new client this week that because they were a single developer, they hadn't messed with the SCM. And I think that's the biggest mistake that single developers make when they come to WINDEV is they think, I'm just a single developer, I don't need the SCM, so I'm not going to fool with learning how to use it. The SCM, I think, is most valuable to a single developer because it kind of goes with that 30-day window thing Andy talked about. You make a change to your code, all of a sudden, 3 weeks from now, people are reporting something not working right in your code. The SCM has some very powerful tools for letting you compare those two versions and showing you exactly where you made code changes. There are so many times on single projects where the SCM has saved my bacon that I can't imagine not using the SCM. Even for my little test sample projects, I put them in the SCM. There, so please learn the SCM. If you don't know how to learn it, if you don't know how to use it, I think there's some older webinars where we kind of gave you some stuff on that.
We've also talked about branching.
Yeah, branching is very powerful if you're releasing production versions. That way, if you've got 2 or 3 versions out in the wild, you can actually roll back to that version that's out there in the wild and make a change and then roll that change forward into the other branches. I believe some of Glenn's material covers
yes,
the SCM as well. So a lot of valuable information out there. For the love of God, use the SCM.
Pitch in, Glenn, when you want to here, okay?
If you're not using the SCM and you lose code, don't come crying to me.
Yeah. I don't want to hear it either.
I told you to use it.
Yeah, there'll be the one out there. I have a project and it's corrupted. How do I recover? Well, go back to your SCM. I don't have an SCM. Sucks to be you. Something like that. And it don't happen very often, but I've seen it once.
Remember, the poor .NET developers pay several $1,000s for the foundation server for the source store thing, and we're getting it free. So use it.
All right, so let's talk about the order header in detail. For those that don't know SQL, you can actually marry tables together by using inner joins. Some of them use the SQL using the queries, things like that from PCSoft. Those are nice little tools. They work great. Some of the really advanced stuff you need to kind of deal with, but for probably 80–90% of what anybody has to work with as far as queries concerned, they work out very nicely. Since I don't, mine's straight SQL, I use SQL straight across the board. Now, what you have to do in the classes, though, is that you have to have the fields to put in there. I mean, it really has to have the fields to put in there. So what I do here is I go into this class, and I'm going to tell it that this is the header fields. And I'm going to put all of the header fields there. Now you're saying, well, that's going to take up some memory and stuff like that. Let me tell you how this works, and it has kind of gotten me a couple of times. Not thinking about it, but I can tell you that it is, I just deleted the duplicates. And let me tell you how this works. If I do not call that field, if I don't call the member, the item count, or due date, what PCSoft then does is says, whoops, you didn't declare it, you didn't use it, so I'm going to discard it from memory. So even if you had 1,000 fields in this class, it's only going to use the ones when you first fill them with data. So if you've got a matching field to it to fill it with data, even if it's blank, it will use it and then say, I ain't using the other 850 fields, and discard them out of memory. So you're not using anything more than what you declare to use. So the whole worry about I'm declaring more memory space and it's filling in, that's not an issue. It's not even an issue. So once I've done this, now I've got the header fields in there, and what do I need to do now? Well, here's the key point, and believe me, anything I'm doing here works with Hyperfile too, okay? It certainly does. I'm not saying that it's the most efficient with Hyperfile. I think that some of the direct stuff using the queries and stuff with Hyperfile is more efficient than this, but if you are in MS SQL, Postgres, Oracle, yeah, any one of the SQL flavors, then I don't see any reason, you know, you're much better off having full control over everything that's going on. So the last step I have to do is I have to set up some information in order to query this data. You notice I declared the order detail data, not the header, because I want all of the details. I want the many to one, not the one to many. I'm going to pick the one from it. I'm going to select from the detail and include the headers that go with it, not the other way around. Okay? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to declare to use that information. I've got certain fields in here that I work with that I've got set up in there to kind of detail that out, and one of them is a join field list. So I want all the fields from the header. So simply put, all I need to do is put a comma and say ordhorh dot asterisk. What that's going to do is say, give me all the header fields. It's not something I usually do, but I'm trying to keep it simple for everybody. Okay? Then I need to say, well, how am I joining the header in? So I'm going to do an order detail data, and I'm going to do an inner join statement. And this one here, I can use the little blocks. For those that don't know about those little blocks, those are the most slickest things since sliced bread. I can use double quotes, I can use whatever I want, and I don't have to do a lot of marrying things together. So now I'm going to do an inner join, order header, ORH, and you say that that is the alias that matches this alias. If I don't do that, it don't work. On ORH dot order header, that order header sysID, I believe it is, equals, now I already know this is order detail, so I got ORD for it, and there I'm done. Now, the last step is that obviously what can happen here is that I can get a mix of this data. It's not going to come back, so I need to have a certain order that it's coming back. So I'm going to actually do a order by. Yes, I have an order by. And I'm going to do an ORH order header. There. And then ORD order detail. Okay. And what that does is it gives me a certain order in the data, so that way they're all kind of married together. You know, they're kind of put together where they need to be. Life is good. And I got to actually check see if I got any data in there. I probably do, but I got to check that. But that gives me the information that I need to have, and it's going to all come together where all the headers together, then the details together. Life is good. Merry Christmas. All that good stuff here. Yeah. Okay. Once I've got those, what I need to do now is fetch the data. So again, we go through the same process that I did up here. I'm going to do the filter string or the where clause. Let me go ahead and steal this because that is one thing I am going to do. Actually, since it's order detail, I can actually use both of those. I can actually use this whole thing right down to here. Excuse me. Here. I'm going to use the where clause. If I got no data, no records, all that stays the same. Excuse me. Okay. Now I got the for index here, and we're going to go through the same record structure that we did before. What is the difference here between the two is what I'm going to do after this, because I've got the headers and the details together as one single statement. And you ask why I did it that way instead of getting the header then go fetching the details. Speed. I'm going to work with data here, and I'm going to get all the records as quickly as I can is what I want to do. I want to get every one of those records as quickly as I can. So I'm going to do a break based upon this. For all us really old folks out here that used to do things like COBOL and all that, the thing that we used to do is work with big sets of data. We try to merge everything together, get it at once, then break it apart as we got. So what I'm going to do here is declare, and I'm going to make it 0. Okay? Now that's the order header sysid, so I know which order header I'm on. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say my order header sysid is, if my ORD sysid is not equal to the order detail record for header sysid.
What he's coding here is called a control break, and if control break doesn't ring a bell for you, you're probably under 40 years old.
That's correct. You're definitely under 40. It's not something y'all use that often. So now I know I'm on a header, or I'm on a brand new header record. So now all I have to do now is I need to actually declare the order header record. No, actually, this is where we'll go ahead and cheat. So I'm going to do the order, the return data, dot. I need to declare that. That's right, I do. So we go ORD hrec return structure. I can declare both of these. Make a D as well. So I can move the two things around. Okay, now I got everything there. Return data. So we're going to do a ORD H record. That equals order detail record. And array. No, that's why it wasn't working. Okay. Array add. Order, let's see, return data. Dot order header data, comma, order H record. Quit that. Now, what I did there was put in a header record. So I know one thing is, and here's the key part about this, guys. You can't do a cycle right there and go back to the top. Why? Because the detail, the first detail of the record is part of that as well. So you don't want to do that. So now I'm going to do an ORD record here equals the order detail record and array add again.
If you're a little lost on what he's doing, what he did with the SQL was he combined the headers and the details together, but in his return set, he's not wanting to return a combined record on each line. So what he's now doing is splitting it back out into separate header and detail so that he has two sets of data in his return result.
Okay. All right. So Pete's absolutely correct. Okay. I go get it as fast as I can from the database, so I have the load of however many records I'm looking for quickly and immediately. Then I'm going to split them back out so that way I get a result set of the records.
You need to set your order sysid, Andy.
That's true. I do. He's correct.
Leave it to the RPG programmer to catch that one.
Yeah, RPG guys. You know.
Yeah, we know control breaks.
Yes, control breaks is things that we do a lot. I used to do it in Oracle all the time. Pro COBOL is what I did. So anyway, this is actually the most efficient way. Now, that's not saying that I can't send back the whole record as one structure and let you deal with it in your program. But let's get realistically, most of these guys are not that great. So, you know, we want to make sure that if we're sending this to someone that we don't know, it's a different programmer, they want to use our WSDL, it's a client that want to use the WSDL for custom reporting, different things like this, because a lot of times if I've got a customer that wants to use custom reports, they want to build their own reports, I certainly don't want to expose my database to them. First of all, it is usually laid out in a way that I spend more time trying to explain to them what's in there versus what's not. But I can expose a web service to them with certain things that they can get, what they can't get, and they'll have the data to be able to play with in a more named format for them. Name, address, you know, things like that. I can go through and do all of that for them and give them a much better feel on how they want to do their data, and I can exclude data that I don't want them to have.
Another important point of doing it the way he's doing it here is if you had that header on every detail line, the result set would in the XML would be
huge,
way larger, and that's going to cause speed issues on the, you know, the biggest performance issue you're going to have here is transferring that XML back and forth.
That's correct. Okay, we have no records in here. There's no header records at all. So what I'm going to have to do here before we're done, and we're already out of time, is that I'll set in a couple of header and detail records. That way this will work, and we'll make sure we do it and test it on phase 3 when we get into phase 3. Now I published this. Let me go ahead and publish it again and just get the WSDLs and stuff out there, and we'll post that so everybody has the WSDLs and for it, and you can include the WSDLs as you need. I'm going to go back through this and document the code itself so that way you can understand what I'm doing through each piece of the code. And that will help you in what you're doing, okay? There it is. That's what I'm looking for. And we'll go through each piece of that as we need to, because this phase 3 is where we're going to get in, and you see there's no data there, so we can't really do anything with it. And I'll put in some data in there just to test it. But phase 3, we're going to take this and we're going to put it into a mobile application. Android mobile application is what we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and have the mobile application prototyped out because it's not going to be a mobile class. It's going to be including a WSDL in your mobile class. We will go through mobile development a little bit later on. I really want to kind of wait till 21 comes out to talk to you more about the mobile and things with it, because it's got some new features and stuff for mobile that we'll talk about. We have not seen yet, other than the French version of the the feature sets, but in some of the translations, there's some pretty nice things to take a look at there, and I'm pretty happy about some of the ways they're going with some of the tools that they're providing for both iOS and Android both. So other than that, this is where we sit for this class. I appreciate y'all's time and a little bit of the run over here now for an hour and 20 minutes. And if there's any other questions, I'll be glad to answer them as we go, as you ask them. So let's spend about 2 minutes answering any more questions, then we'll shut this thing down, and I'll see you again in 4 weeks for me. And Pete's going to be, go ahead, what are you going to do in 2 weeks, Pete?
In 2 weeks, what I'm going to be showing you is how to embed a hyperfile classic file actually into your executable. And what we're doing with it in the example is we're storing some PDFs for documentation and popping those up on the screen. Even though the PDF technically doesn't exist anywhere on the drive, we've actually just embedded it and shipping it with our executable by embedding the hyperfile into our executable. So we have a single executable file, and that's all we have to give to someone. So if you're, lots of other uses you could do with it. You know, if you were doing an online catalog, you could have your hyperfile for, or not an online, but a catalog that you were distributing via an exe. You could actually incorporate it directly into your executable, and the only file you would have is your exe file. You wouldn't have any hyperfiles on disk at all. So
yeah, that'd be pretty cool.
That's what we're showing next week.
Or no, 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks, we'll be doing an example of that, and then everyone be prepared because Andy's next session is April 1st. So God help us all.
Hey, you never know. You never know what's going to happen that day. Never know what's going to happen that day. But, well, like I said, on that,
doesn't look like we have any questions, so they're either scared to death or they've got it all figured out.
Awesome. That is freaking awesome. But like I said, for that session there, we will actually embed it in an Android application that I'll have pre-built. We will test this because I will add some records to it. And what we'll do from that Android also is we will go ahead and we will add one more method in here, what I call ACD members. So basically what we'll be able to do is add, change, and delete members from our mobile device. Now, that is also repeatable for the details, the headers, you know, if you want to, you know, actually enter in an entire order and send it to the web service. Now, one of the cool things that I do on the on the mobile devices, as we, you know, just for a few moments, is that I check to see whether the internet's up or down, and if the internet's down, I save the records locally in an XML, so I can just resend them as I need to. All of this is going to be going on. That is going to be on April 1st. Pete will have it in 2 weeks. Other than that, all I can say is y'all be good or be good at it, and I appreciate your time today. From W Experts, bye. Hit the button, Pete.
Sorry, my headset died.